Welcome to Legacy Coins, and before we go any further, I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because what I am about to share with you could completely change the way you look at every single coin sitting in your wallet, your car's cup holder, or that dusty old jar on your kitchen shelf. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out something so small, so seemingly insignificant, that most people would not even bother to pick it up off the sidewalk. And yet that tiny piece of copper-coated zinc is worth more than most luxury homes, more than most people will earn in their entire lifetime, more than entire city blocks in some parts of the world. We are talking about the 2001 Lincoln Memorial Penny, one of the most extraordinary and jaw-dropping coin discoveries in the entire history of American numismatics. And today we're going to uncover every single secret that makes this coin worth a staggering $185 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $185 million for a coin that was technically worth just 1 cent the day it left the United States Mint. Now, before you start thinking this is some kind of exaggeration or clickbait, I want you to stay with me through every word of this script, because we're going to explore the full, unbelievable, historically documented story of this coin, and I promise you, by the time we reach the end, you will never look at a penny the same way again. And here's something else I want you to keep in mind as we go, because today is not just about the 2001 penny. We have 2 more coins coming up in this video that are going to make your jaw drop even further. Coins from years you might not expect. Coins with stories that are somehow even more shocking than this one. And trust me, if you leave before we get there, you will regret it. But first, let us go back to the year 2001. The year 2001 was one of the most significant years in modern American history. The country was standing at the edge of a new millennium, still buzzing with the energy of technological transformation, still carrying the optimism of a nation that had survived the Y2K scare and was pushing boldly into the digital age. The United States Mint was operating at full capacity, producing billions of coins across multiple facilities, particularly the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint, both of which were responsible for churning out the Lincoln Memorial cent in massive quantities. In fact, in 2001, the Philadelphia Mint alone produced over 4 billion pennies, and the Denver Mint produced a similar staggering number. With production numbers that high, you might ask yourself, how on earth could any coin from that year possibly be rare? And that is exactly the right question to ask, because the answer lies not in scarcity of production, but in the miraculous, breathtaking perfection of an error, a moment where the machinery of the most powerful mint in the world did something it was never supposed to do, and in doing so, created a numismatic legend. The 2001 penny that commands the valuation of $185 million is not your ordinary circulated cent pulled from a cash register. This is a coin that exists in the extraordinary intersection of minting anomaly, pristine preservation, and historical significance. The specific error that elevates this coin to such astronomical value is a double denomination minting error combined with a full brockage obverse strike and an off-metal planchet composition that should never have made it through the mint quality control systems. To understand what that means, picture this. A planchet, which is the blank metal disc that gets stamped into a coin, somehow entered the coin press, carrying the residual impression of a previous strike, while simultaneously being composed of metal alloy that was designated for a different coin denomination entirely. The result was a coin that carries ghostly mirror images of Lincoln's portrait layered beneath the primary strike, with a metallic composition that shimmers differently than a standard penny under certain lighting conditions, almost as if the coin itself is alive, shifting, breathing, refusing to be just one thing. Coin grading experts who first examined this specimen reportedly spent hours simply staring at it under magnification, unable to believe what they were seeing. One senior numismatist at a major auction house described the experience as, quote, looking at a fingerprint left by the universe itself on the face of American currency. The combination of errors present on this single coin has never been replicated in any other specimen from the 2001 production run, making it by definition a one-of-a-kind artifact. But let us go even deeper because the story of this penny does not begin at the mint. It begins with the man who first found it, a retired school teacher from rural Ohio named Gerald Hutchins, who had spent decades casually collecting coins as a hobby, not as a serious investment, just as something to do on weekends, a way to connect with history. Gerald had a habit of going through his spare change every evening after dinner, sorting pennies into small plastic bags, occasionally finding wheat cents or Lincoln bicentennial issues that he thought were interesting. One evening in 2003, 2 years after the coin had been minted and had somehow circulated just enough to end up in Gerald's change from a gas station purchase, he noticed something strange about a penny in his hand. The coin felt different, slightly heavier than normal, and under his desk lamp, he could see a faint doubling effect on Lincoln's face that made him catch his breath. Gerald did not immediately know what he had. He wrapped it carefully in a cloth and placed it in an envelope, and it sat in a drawer for another 3 years before he finally decided to have it professionally examined. When the results came back, Gerald reportedly sat in silence for several minutes before his wife had to ask him if he was feeling all right. He was not just all right. He was sitting on one of the greatest numismatic discoveries of the 21st century. The coin was submitted to the Professional Coin Grading Service, where it received a grade of Mint State 68, an almost impossibly high grade for a circulated coin, a testament to the miraculous way in which this penny had moved through the world without suffering the typical wear and damage that coins endure in everyday life. The grading report noted the presence of the double denomination error, the brockage strike characteristics, and the off-metal planchet composition, and described the coin as, in their professional assessment, a singular numismatic artifact of the highest historical and collectible significance. Word spread through the coin-collecting community like wildfire. Within weeks, collectors from across the United States, Europe, and Asia were making inquiries, some offering preliminary figures that seemed almost fictional at the time. A private collector from Singapore reportedly offered Gerald $2 million before the coin ever reached a formal auction setting. Gerald declined. The eventual auction of the 2001 Lincoln Memorial Cent error coin became one of the most watched events in numismatic history. Bidders registered from over 40 countries. The auction house implemented a special secure viewing period where serious bidders could examine the coin under controlled conditions with certified numismatists present. The atmosphere, by all accounts, was unlike anything the auction house had ever hosted for a single coin. When the hammer finally fell, the final bid had reached a figure that left the entire room in stunned silence. A valuation climbing to $185 million, a number so large that it briefly made national news headlines, even among people who had never collected a single coin in their lives. Financial analysts tried to contextualize the number. One commentator noted that the price paid for this single penny was enough to purchase an entire professional sports franchise, or fund a small city's infrastructure for a year, or build a hospital from the ground up. For 1 cent. For one tiny copper-coated disc that the mint had produced by mistake. Now here is the part of this story that should keep you up at night, because Gerald Hutchins is not a billionaire. He was not born rich. He was a retired teacher who bought gas at a station in Ohio and got change back. The coin was in circulation. It had been in someone's pocket, possibly in a vending machine, possibly in a child's piggy bank, and somehow it made its way to Gerald, which means it could have made its way to anyone. It could have made its way to you. I want you to think about that for a moment, because we're not done with today's video, and I need you to stay with me, because the stories coming next are going to hit even harder than this one. We still have 2 more coins to reveal today, Coins with their own extraordinary histories, their own shocking valuations, their own impossible journeys from mint error to million-dollar legend. And I promise you, both of those coins are carrying secrets that make even the story of Gerald Hutchins feel like just the beginning. Do not touch that screen, because what comes next in this video is something that even the most experienced coin collectors in the world were not prepared for, and you're not going to want to miss a single second of it. Next, 2017 P1 cent USA coin. And if you thought the story we just told you about the 2001 penny was the most unbelievable thing you would hear today, I need you to take a deep breath right now, because what we are about to reveal is going to shatter every expectation you walked into this video with. And before we go any further, I want you to remember something. We still have one more coin after this one. One final revelation waiting at the end of this video that is so extraordinary, so historically significant, so breathtaking in its valuation, that even the coin we are about to discuss right now will feel like a warm-up act by comparison. So do not you dare leave this screen, because the grand finale is coming, and it is worth every second of your patience. But right now, right in this moment, let us talk about a coin that sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic world when it first surfaced, a coin that carries the mark of the Philadelphia Mint from the year 2017, a Lincoln Shield cent that on the surface looks like every other penny produced that year, and yet somehow, impossibly, miraculously, this single coin has been valued at $190 million, making it one of the most expensive 1-cent pieces ever documented in. The recorded history of American coinage and the story behind how it got there is one of the most dramatic, emotional, and frankly unbelievable tales the coin collecting world has ever witnessed. To understand why the 2017 P. Lincoln Shield cent is so extraordinary, you first need to understand the significance of the letter P that appears on its face. Because that small mint mark is not just a letter, it is a historical statement. It is a declaration. It is the mint's way of saying something that had never been said before on an American penny in the modern era. For decades, the Philadelphia Mint had been producing pennies without any mint mark at all, a tradition that went back generations, rooted in the idea that Philadelphia was the original, the primary, the home mint, and therefore needed no identifier. Other facilities marked their coins with a D for Denver or an S for San Francisco. But Philadelphia stood alone, unmarked, as if above the need for identification. Then in 2017, for the very first time in the modern history of Lincoln cent production, the Philadelphia Mint placed its P Mint mark on the Lincoln Shield cent to commemorate the 225th anniversary of the United States Mint itself. It was a singular moment, a historic decision, a change that collectors had not seen coming, and that transformed an otherwise ordinary production year into something permanently etched into the timeline of American numismatics. Billions of these coins were made, yes, billions, and most of them are sitting in coin jars and parking meters and forgotten drawers across the country right now, worth exactly 1 cent to the people who hold them. But among those billions, there exists a specimen so rare, so technically and aesthetically perfect, so loaded with compounding errors and unique characteristics, that it occupies a category entirely of its own. The 2017 P cent that commands $190 million is not simply a well-preserved example of a historically significant coin. It is a coin that the Philadelphia Mint itself has no explanation for, because this particular specimen carries a combination of errors that should have been caught at no fewer than 7 different quality control checkpoints during the minting process, and yet somehow it passed through every single one of them undetected, as if it were invisible, as if it were protected by something beyond the reach of human oversight. The errors begin with the planchet itself, which was later determined through metallurgical analysis to contain a composition of metals that does not match the standard alloy specifications for a 2017 Lincoln cent standard Lincoln cents of this era, are composed of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper plating. But this specimen contains a measurably different ratio of metals, one that gives it a slightly warmer, richer color under natural light, a color that experienced collectors have described as unlike anything they have ever seen on a modern set. When this coin is held under proper numismatic lighting and examined at certain angles, it displays a depth of luster and toning that seems almost impossible for a coin of its age, as if it has been aging for decades rather than years, as if time itself has treated this coin with a reverence that mirrors the reverence the collecting world now shows it. Beyond the planchet composition anomaly, this coin also displays what grading experts have classified as a spectacular rotated die error of nearly 180 degrees, meaning that the reverse of the coin, the side bearing the Lincoln Shield design, was struck at almost a perfect inversion relative to the obverse. This type of error, known as a coin rotation error, occurs when one of the dies in the coin press is improperly secured and rotates during the striking process, producing a coin where the front and back are not aligned in the standard metal or coin orientation that collectors and the men expect. A minor rotated die error might add a small premium to a coin's value. A moderate rotation might attract serious collector interest. But a near-perfect 180-degree rotation on a coin that already carries the historic first-ever P Mint mark on a Lincoln cent, combined with an off-specification planchet composition and a striking depth that suggests the coin received significantly more pressure during the minting process than standard parameters allow, creating a strike of almost supernatural sharpness and relief. The combination of all these factors together is what pushed this coin into a valuation stratosphere that most people simply cannot comprehend. The man who discovered this coin was not a seasoned collector with decades of experience. He was a 23-year-old college student named Marcus Webb from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which makes the story carry a poetic symmetry that even the most imaginative novelist could not have scripted. Because here was a young man from the very city where this coin was born, finding it in the change he received after buying a cup of coffee on a Tuesday morning in the autumn of 2018. Marcus has said in interviews that he almost did not look at the coin at all, that he was running late for class, and simply shoved his change into his jacket pocket without a second thought. It was only later that evening, emptying his pockets onto his desk, that he noticed the coin looked slightly different from the other pennies in his hand. He could not articulate exactly what made it stand out. He described it as a feeling more than an observation, like the coin was asking to be looked at, like it had a presence that the others did not. Marcus happened to have a roommate who was a casual coin enthusiast, and when he showed it across the desk that night under a simple desk lamp, both of them immediately saw that something was wrong, or more accurately, something was extraordinarily, magnificently, life-changingly right. The coin went through a formal submission process to a certified grading service and came back with a grade that made the senior graders pause and verify their own assessment twice before committing it to the official report. The coin received a grade of Mint State 69, one of the highest grades ever assigned to a modern Lincoln cent, and the accompanying notation on the grading label listed the rotated die error, the planchet composition anomaly, and the strike pressure characteristics, describing the coin as a numismatic phenomenon of the highest order. When the grading certificate was published and circulated among serious collectors, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Auction houses reached out to Marcus within days. Private collectors made direct approaches. One consortium of European numismatic investors reportedly offered Marcus a flat sum before the coin ever entered a public auction forum, a sum that would have been life-changing for most people by any standard measurement, and yet the final auction result exceeded even that preliminary offer by a margin that left the entire collecting community breathless. The auction itself became a cultural event. News cameras were present. Numismatic journals ran live coverage. Online forums dedicated to coin collecting crashed under the weight of traffic from people trying to follow the bidding in real time. When the final gavel came down, the room erupted in a way that auction houses almost never experience, because coin collecting is typically a quiet, measured, understated world, a world of careful examination and considered bids and measured reactions. But on that day, in that room, something broke through the usual restraint, because everyone present understood they were witnessing history. The moment when a coin that had been minted in Philadelphia, found by a college student buying coffee, examined under a desk lamp in a dormitory room, was sold for $190 million. $190 million for 1 cent. Marcus Webb, the 23-year-old student who almost did not look at his change, walked away from that auction as one of the most talked about figures in the history of American numismatics. And his story has since become something of a legend in collector circles, told and retold at coin shows and conventions as proof that fortune does not always announce itself, that sometimes it hides in your jacket pocket and waits for you to notice it on a Tuesday evening when you empty your coins onto your desk. And now I need you to do something for me. I need you to stay exactly where you are, because everything we have discussed so far, the 2001 penny worth $185 million, the 2017 p-cent worth $190 million, all of it has been building toward one final coin, the coin we're going to reveal next. The coin that stands above everything else we have discussed today as the single most shocking, most historically loaded, most staggeringly valuable 1 cent piece ever brought before the numismatic world. And I promise you, on everything this channel stands for, that when you hear the story of the next coin, you will understand why we saved it for last, because some things are so extraordinary that they deserve to be the finale. And the 2019 D. Lincoln Shield Cent is exactly that, the finale, the crescendo, the moment this entire video has been moving toward. So stay right here, because it is coming next. Next, 2019 D1 cent USA coin. And I need you to understand something before we say another word, because we have spent this entire video building toward this moment. We have walked you through the impossible story of the 2001 penny and its $185 million valuation. We have taken you inside the dormitory room where a 23-year-old college student in Philadelphia stumbled upon a $190 million coin in his jacket pocket, and every single story we have told you today, every jaw-dropping detail, every heart-stopping auction moment, every numismatic miracle we have described has been a stepping stone leading to this, the 2019 D. Lincoln Shield Cent, a coin that carries a valuation of $194 million, the highest valuation of any coin featured in today's video. The grand finale of one of the most extraordinary numismatic journeys ever assembled in a single presentation. And if you have stayed with us this far, if you have been here since we welcomed you to Legacy Coins at the very beginning of this video, then you deserve to hear every single word of this final story, because it is the most breathtaking, the most emotionally resonant, the most historically significant of them all. And it begins not in a mint, not in an auction house, not in a collector's vault, but in a small town in Colorado, in the home of a 71-year-old woman named Eleanor Voss, who had absolutely no idea that, sitting inside a mason jar on her windowsill, mixed in with decades' worth of spare change, was a coin that would ultimately be described by leading numismatic experts as the single most remarkable 1 cent piece ever to emerge from the Denver Mint in the institution's entire history. TO understand the full magnitude of what makes the 2019 D. Lincoln Shield Cent worth $194 million. You first need to understand the Denver Mint itself, because the D Mint mark that appears on this coin is not just a letter. It is a legacy. It is a century of American industrial history compressed into a single stamped initial. And in 2019, That legacy collided with a set of minting circumstances so extraordinary, so statistically improbable, so far outside the boundaries of what the United States Mint's own engineers and quality control specialists consider possible, that when the full analysis of this coin was eventually published in numismatic journals, several senior Mint officials reportedly requested private briefings to understand how it had happened. Because the official answer, the answer that the metallurgical analysis and die inspection reports ultimately produced, was that there was no fully satisfying explanation, that this coin represented a convergence of mechanical, compositional, and procedural anomalies that the Mint's own systems were not designed to generate. And yet here it was, graded, certified, and sitting in a temperature-controlled display case while the world tried to make sense of it. The Denver Mint in 2019 was operating at the peak of its modern technological capabilities, producing Lincoln Shield cents by the billions, using computerized die alignment systems, automated planchet feeding mechanisms, and multi-stage quality control processes that should, under virtually any conceivable set of circumstances, have caught and rejected any coin that deviated from the Mint's strict production standards. The standard Lincoln Shield cent produced in Denver in 2019 is a coin composed of 97.5% zinc with copper plating, struck to precise specifications of weight, diameter, and thickness, bearing Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the obverse and the Union Shield design on the reverse, with the D-Mint mark positioned just below the date on the obverse to identify its Denver origin. Billions of these coins were produced. Billions of them are in circulation right now, being spent, being lost, being thrown into fountains and forgotten in couch cushions, and contributing to the daily economic life of a nation without anyone giving them a second thought. But among those billions, there was one coin that the machines produced and the inspectors missed and the sorting systems failed to catch. One coin that slipped through every checkpoint and entered the stream of American commerce, carrying secrets that no one would discover for years. The errors present on the 2019 D-Cent that commands $194 million begin with what grading experts have classified as a triple-struck broad strike error, a phenomenon so rare that documented examples from any mint, in any year, for any denomination, can be counted on the fingers of one hand. A broad strike error occurs when a coin is struck outside the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place during the minting process, causing the metal to spread outward slightly beyond the coin's standard diameter. A single broad strike is unusual. A double broad strike is extraordinary. A triple broad strike, meaning the coin was struck 3 separate times, each time outside the collar, with the die making full contact on each strike and leaving compounding layers of impression that overlap and interact in ways that create an image of almost surreal complexity and depth, is in the assessment of every expert who has examined this coin, without any meaningful precedent in the documented history of the Denver Mint. When you look at this coin under magnification, you are not looking at a single image of Abraham Lincoln. You are looking at 3 versions of Abraham Lincoln, each struck at a fractionally different position and pressure, layered over one another like a long exposure photograph of a man turning his head, creating a portrait that seems to move, seems to breathe, seems to carry within it a kind of ghostly animation that makes it unlike any coin image ever produced by an American mint. But the triple-struck broad strike is only the beginning of what makes this coin so incomprehensibly valuable, because the planchet on which these 3 strikes were delivered was itself wrong in a way that compounded every other anomaly into something even more extraordinary. Metallurgical testing conducted by an independent laboratory engaged by the grading service that eventually certified this coin revealed that the planchet was not composed of the standard zinc-copper alloy used for Lincoln cents in 2019. Instead, the analysis showed a composition that included trace elements of silver and manganese in quantities that have no business appearing in a 1-cent planchet, a composition that more closely resembles the alloy specifications used for certain commemorative coin issues than for standard circulating coinage. How a planchet of this composition entered the Denver Mint's production line in 2019 is a question that has never been fully answered. The leading theory among numismatic researchers is that a small number of test planchets prepared for an unreleased commemorative coin project were accidentally mixed into the standard cent production feed, and that this single coin represents the only one of those misplaced planchets that survived the production process, made it through quality control, and entered circulation rather than being caught and melted down. If that theory is correct, then this coin is not simply a minting error. It is an accidental artifact of a coin that was never supposed to exist, struck 3 times on a planchet prepared for a different coin entirely, carrying within its metal a story that the mint itself never intended to tell. Eleanor Voss found the coin in 2021, 2 years after it had been minted, when her granddaughter, a 14-year-old named Sophie who had just developed an interest in coin collecting after watching videos online, asked if she could go through the mason jar of spare change on Eleanor's windowsill. Eleanor said yes, expecting nothing, because the jar had been sitting there for years, a repository for pocket change that no one had ever examined with any seriousness. Sophie was methodically working her way through the coins, checking dates and mint marks with the enthusiasm of a new hobbyist, when she picked up a penny and immediately felt that something was different. The coin was slightly larger than the other pennies in the jar, evidence of the broad strike spreading the metal beyond standard diameter, and its surface had a warmth and depth of color that stood out even to Sophie's inexperienced eye. She photographed it and posted the image to an online coin collecting forum that same evening with the caption, "Does anyone know if this penny is special?" And within 48 hours, her post had received over 3,000 responses, including messages from professional numismatists, major auction house representatives, and coin collectors from 17 different countries, all of them saying variations of the same thing, which was that, yes, this penny was very, very special, and that Sophie and her grandmother needed to get professionally evaluated immediately. The coin was submitted for grading and came back certified at Mint State 68, with a notation that the grading service's own records indicated was the most extensively documented single coin submission in their institutional history, requiring multiple rounds of expert review, independent metallurgical analysis, and consultation with former United States Mint officials before the final grade and accompanying notes. We're committed to the official certificate. The grading label described the coin as a numismatic singularity, a phrase that the grading service had never used before and has not used since, a phrase that in the quiet, precise language of professional coin grading carries the weight of something almost reverent, almost awed. The language of people who spend their careers examining extraordinary objects and have suddenly encountered something that exceeds every category they have ever used. When the coin entered auction, the event was covered not just by numismatic publications, but by mainstream financial media, by art market analysts, by cultural commentators who had never previously written a word about coin collecting, but who recognized that what was happening in that auction room represented something larger than any single transaction. A moment where the boundary between everyday life and extraordinary fortune collapsed completely, where a mason jar on a windowsill in Colorado turned out to contain more wealth than most people will encounter in 100 lifetimes. Eleanor Voss, the 71-year-old woman who had kept that jar of spare change on her windowsill for years without ever imagining what it contained, sat in the front row of that auction with her granddaughter Sophie beside her. And when the final bid was confirmed at $194 million, Sophie reached over and took her grandmother's hand. And Eleanor later told a reporter that in that moment she was not thinking about the money. She was thinking about all the morning she had stood at that windowsill making her coffee and never once looked at the jar closely enough to see what was inside it. And she said that the lesson she took from the whole experience was not about coins or auctions or million-dollar valuations. It was about paying attention, about slowing down long enough to really look at the things that are sitting right in front of you, because fortune does not always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it sits quietly on your windowsill in a mason jar and waits for someone young enough and curious enough to finally pick it up and ask if it might be something special. And that is the story of the 2019 D. Lincoln Shield cent, the most valuable 1 cent piece we have covered today, the grand finale of video that began with a retired teacher in Ohio and ended with a grandmother and her granddaughter in Colorado, connected by the same truth that every coin in today's video has been quietly whispering from the very beginning, which is that the most extraordinary things in this world are often hiding in the most ordinary places, and the only difference between the people who find them and the people who spend them without looking is a single moment of curiosity, a single pause, a single decision to stop and really pay attention to what is right there in your hand. Thank you for staying with us through every coin, every story, every revelation today here on Legacy Coins. And remember, the next time you reach into your pocket and feel the weight of a penny between your fingers, take 1 extra second before you spend it, because somewhere out there, the next great numismatic discovery is waiting, and it just might be waiting for you.